The relationship between the United States and Venezuela has deteriorated into one of the most volatile geopolitical standoffs in the Western Hemisphere. As of late 2025, the two nations are locked in a high-stakes confrontation characterized by naval blockades, military posturing, and aggressive economic warfare. To understand how this point was reached, one must look back at decades of shifting alliances, failed diplomatic experiments, and the systematic collapse of the Venezuelan state. Historically, the United States and Venezuela shared a robust economic partnership anchored in oil. For much of the 20th century, Venezuela was a stable democracy and a primary energy supplier to the U.S. However, the election of Hugo Chavez in 1999 marked a decisive turning point. Chavez utilized high oil prices to fund his Bolivarian revolution, nationalizing key industries, including assets belonging to American companies, and adopting a staunchly anti-American foreign policy. This era planted the seeds of the current ideological conflict. Following Chavez's death in 2013, Nicolás Maduro assumed power, inheriting a fragile economy that soon collapsed due to mismanagement and plummeting oil prices. Under Maduro, Venezuela descended into hyperinflation, causing severe shortages of food and medicine. This humanitarian disaster triggered a massive exodus, with millions of Venezuelans fleeing the country, a migration crisis that would eventually become a central issue in U.S. domestic politics. During Donald Trump's first term, 2017-2021, the U.S. initiated a maximum pressure campaign. This strategy included crippling sanctions on Venezuela's state-run oil company, PDVSA, and the diplomatic recognition of opposition leader Juan Guaidó as the legitimate interim president. While these measures severely damaged the Maduro regime's finances, they failed to dislodge him from power, as he retained the loyalty of the military and support from allies like Russia and China. The subsequent Biden administration attempted a different approach, prioritizing diplomatic negotiations. This included temporary sanctions relief in exchange for promises of free and fair elections, culminating in the Barbados Agreement. However, the Maduro government eventually reneged on these commitments, barring opposition candidates and tightening its grip on power. By the time the 2024 U.S. election arrived, the diplomatic track had largely stalled, setting the stage for a dramatic shift in policy. Upon returning to office in January 2025, President Trump immediately reverted to and intensified his previous hardline stance. His administration designated Venezuelan criminal organizations, specifically Tren de Aragua, as foreign terrorist organizations, linking the Venezuelan state directly to the gang violence seen in American cities. This move provided a new legal and rhetorical framework for deeper U.S. intervention, framing the conflict not just as a diplomatic dispute, but as a matter of U.S. national security. The situation escalated dramatically in December 2025 when the U.S. Navy seized a Venezuelan oil tanker, the Skipper, in the Caribbean. Following this, President Trump ordered a total and complete blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers entering or leaving Venezuela. This effectively established a naval cordon around the country, a move described by the administration as necessary to stop the flow of illicit resources to a narco-terrorist regime. Accompanying this blockade has been a significant military buildup. The U.S. Southern Command has deployed what Trump described as the largest armada ever assembled in the history of South America to the region. This deployment includes aircraft carriers and destroyers patrolling the Caribbean, conducting airstrikes against suspected drug smuggling vessels, and signaling a willingness to use kinetic force that was largely absent in previous years. President Trump's fascination with Nicolás Maduro is multifaceted, serving both geopolitical and domestic political purposes. Domestically, Maduro acts as a potent foil. Trump frequently points to Venezuela as a cautionary tale of socialism gone wrong. By engaging in a direct confrontation with Maduro, Trump reinforces his image as a strongman fighting against leftist authoritarianism, a narrative that resonates deeply with his base, particularly in Florida. Furthermore, Trump views Maduro as the root cause of the migration crisis at the U.S. southern border. In 2025, Trump explicitly accused Maduro of emptying his prisons and insane asylums to send criminals to the United States. This rhetoric links the survival of the Maduro regime directly to the safety of American communities, justifying extreme measures like naval blockades as acts of self-defense against invasion. The fascination with Venezuelan oil is equally strategic. Venezuela sits on the largest proven oil reserves in the world, yet its production has decimated. For Trump, who champions American energy dominance, the control or denial of these resources is a critical lever. The blockade is designed to completely choke off the regime's only significant source of revenue, theoretically forcing the military to abandon Maduro as the money runs out. However, in late 2025, a new dimension emerged in Trump's rhetoric regarding oil: asset recovery. Trump has begun demanding the return of stolen oil, land, and assets, referring to the nationalizations of the Chavez era and alleged illicit financial flows. This reframes the intervention not just as regime change, but as a repossession effort, asserting a quasi-proprietary American interest in Venezuelan resources as compensation for past wrongs. This obsession with oil also has a geopolitical angle. By blocking Venezuelan oil shipments, the U.S. is indirectly squeezing China and other buyers who have kept the Maduro economy afloat. The blockade forces these nations to decide whether to challenge the U.S. Navy to receive their crude imports, thereby raising the stakes of the conflict to a global level involving rival superpowers. As of late 2025, the outcome of this aggressive strategy remains uncertain. The Maduro regime has decried the blockade as an act of piracy and war, vowing to defend its sovereignty. While the economic stranglehold is tighter than ever, history has shown that sanctions often hurt the general populace more than the ruling elite, who control the remaining resources and black markets. Ultimately, the U.S. and Venezuela are currently in a dangerous escalation spiral. What began as a diplomatic dispute over democratic norms has evolved into a militarized standoff over oil, migration, and national security. With the U.S. Navy patrolling the Venezuelan coast and the rhetoric from the White House reaching fever pitch, the region faces the precarious possibility of open conflict.